Good morning and welcome to the committee meeting for August 9th, 2023. Today we will be discussing law enforcement, police department, fire department, and 911 communications. Today we have Council President Austin Klunt, Councilman Ron Sprinkle, and Councilman Joe Hockett, Fire Chief Darren Nelson, Public Safety Commissioner Justin Day, Police Chief Mark Dvorak, and Communications Supervisor Andrea Potasek. Go ahead, guys.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started this morning. We'll go ahead and start with police. Looking at here, we found a couple spots. Go ahead, Mark, and we'll look off the one we just been working on because there's a few cuts in there that we found to make. So we'll kind of go over there and talk about those.
Okay, not much for cuts. We're pretty much down to bare bones on our budget. Nothing that is a want. Almost everything except for only thing that we took a little bit off on the DARE, which was 500. Dropped that down to 300. The equipment, that line is. Let me grab one that better breaks it down a little bit. But
4291.
yeah, I'm looking at actually, yeah, for crime prevention DARE from 500, dropped that down to 300. Dropped down another one down to 4340 equipment. That is for tasers. I'd like to replace one taser every year at least. That's what we've most years prior to this year and last year been replacing more than one. Well, sometimes 0 tasers, other times we do like 4 or 5. Trying to make that more consistent so we don't have a big bill every few years. Just make it one a year. So we'll get hopefully one of those this year. Of course, we have to get cartridges for the tasers every year. That's a required training that we have to do every year to be certified in tasers. And they need batteries. Try to get a couple batteries every year as well. On top of that equipment line, the biggest expense would be the computers.
That's what 2 computers.
Okay. Right now, replace computers would be roughly $5,200 to add 4 computers, I should say, not replace computers. We could drop that down to 2 if you'd like. We could probably get by with just adding 2 computers, and officers will. Right now, they're sharing between our 8 officers. They're sharing 2 computers. Move over to the halfway house. Those 2 computers still would be shared. I'd like to get more computers. Eventually, one for each of the desks over there. But if they have to share until budget is better, we could do that. Initially, I'd like 4, but if we need to drop it down to 2, that $5,180 for 4 would drop down to $2,600. So we could do that.
So that would take that number that you're seeing, that 8,942 under equipment, that would drop down to $6,040.
That is basically the only 2 things that I would feel comfortable cutting any expenses on. Uniforms, we're already over budget this year on that just because of so many new hires. I'd like to keep that budget the same for uniforms, but then they had added expense of body armor because we're short for vest. Just because of new officers are different sizes that are old officers that used to work here, so that's a absolute must. Everything else has gone down. Repairs and maintenance for the vehicles, actually, that has gone up 1,000. just because now our two newer vehicles are no longer bumper-to-bumper warranty. Did find out something that probably affect that budget a little bit. Our newer vehicles, our 2020s, any work you do on those, if we take them down to the city shop, just for example, we had brake pads replaced on our 2020s, you'd think those wouldn't throw a code just by replacing brake pads. They do, a bunch of codes that have to be cleared. Our shop doesn't have the equipment to clear codes. So not only if we get them fixed down there, then we have to send them out to Harry K or Frontier Ford or one of the other shops just to clear the codes. So in the future, now that we know that, instead of being able to save money by doing our own repairs, that's something that those newer vehicles, we're not gonna be able to do. Anything work done to them has to go to Frontier or one of the other shops here in town to have work done on those. So I'm reluctant to drop that down less than the, was it 19,000, I believe.
19,000.
I don't see any other cuts really that we could make.
And your office and desk supplies, 4211, 426104. It's 5575. Went up from 2139 last year. Or
No, that's our year-to-date activity this year.
okay. What is involved in that? What do you? What is involved in that line?
That
Office
is
and desk
anything,
supplies.
that is anything like paper, citations, what else have I put on there? Dare, or not dare stickers, but stickers we give out to the kids at events. Little odds and ends of things maybe that need to go into a car for just a little equipment, because that's basically our office, you know. Those
Last
are
year,
very-
Joe, if you look, we had it budgeted at 6,200. So dropped it down to 55,575 for next year.
Those are
So
even
far
like
this
the-
year, you've used 2139, correct?
That is through June.
All through June.
Correct. I do not have July closed out yet, so July's numbers are not in there. So that is a 6-month. I should also let all of you know, I'm not sure how many of you have read all of your minutes yet. Personnel committee did cut personal services from 7.5 down to 6.75. So that made a difference in everyone's budgets. Actually, they cut 3 major things between the last 2 committees. They cut mayor and council's wage increase. They cut down to 6.75 for all employees, and they cut the extra position out of finance office they compromised with me. They gave me a deputy in replacement with the current employees that I have. But with all of that change, it was a total of $151,000 cut in the last 2 days out of the budget. So rather than 1.6, you're at 1.4.5. So that did make an overall difference. You'll see it affected Andrea's budget by 4,000, Mark's budget by 4,000. Doesn't affect fire because they're set. But there were some cuts on that end as well.
And from last meeting to this meeting, it looks like the salaries, it was almost, well, right at 14,000.
But I look at 2022, $667, and then in 2023, it jumped up almost $6,000. What precipitated that huge increase?
That
I
was,
mean,
if you look.
what happened? I mean,
If you look
boy, that's
up
huge.
if you look up further, supplies was just grouped into one big budget instead of broke down into smaller categories.
2022,
You mean
we started
2022?
using the points. So things started getting separated out
So
down.
you bought
far
stuff in
further.
2022 on different lines than you did. Excuse me, on office desk supplies.
Cause see, if you look back at 2021, all that would have come out of just supplies, Joe.
Yeah.
And our budget for supplies was 19,400.
And when?
In 2021, clear over to the left.
Oh, I see. Yep,
The
yep.
budget for 2022 was actually 17,000 for supplies. And then that's when we started using all the like .1, .2,
Yep.
.3. So supplies then got broke down underneath all of those. So then we started keeping a little better track of what needed to come out of each one of those point systems. Cause there is a ton of paper.
Oh, I bet.
We spend a bunch of money on paper every year. The stickers started coming out of there. That is a huge thing. Anytime we go up to the schools, to the carnivals, to anything like that, all those kids swarm you. And I don't care if it's the high school or the elementary school, they all want their stickers. The citations, that has gone up exponentially. You know, the warning tickets, the fix-it
That's what I'm hearing.
tickets. So, yeah, all that stuff has,
And you'd be surprised how much that stuff costs. It's
Oh, I
way
suppose.
more than I ever would have dreamt. And then the supplies, other things come out of that, like our target stands, the wood for the backers, things like that all comes out of supplies. Small
Okay.
things that you don't really think of until, okay, well, we need this, we better get it. And last year, I didn't, in 2022, as you can see, I didn't spend a whole lot there. Just trying to save as much money as I can, working with what we got. And supplies ran pretty thin, replacing or renewing our inventory on those this year, and just trying to keep up that inventory. I think we ran out of pretty much every sort of parking ticket, warning ticket, stickers that go on cars that park too long on the streets, you know, everything, little cards that tell you, okay, this is how you mail in your fine, or do it online and whatnot. There's all sorts of little things that
Oh, yeah.
we have to buy that, you know, just ran down to nothing. So,
and then if you look at the 2023, so through the first half of 2023, we've spent 2139 out of that already, so. That's why it dropped down, because we weren't on pace to be spending that 62.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
I got a question on one line here. 2022, year 2022, $398 in ammo, budgeted $34.56 in 23. We haven't spent any in 23, and we got $36.82 budgeted for 24.
that's actually, there should be something in there, because I've got ammo this year. I don't know why that line is blank. But that budget is actually totally spent, because I've spent all of that money on replacing used ammo.
If the check didn't get written until July, it wouldn't be in this sheet.
Okay.
Did it get,
I would have to check.
and we go through $3,500 a year in ammo?
Oh, yeah. If we want to, the plan was to keep our officers proficient in their shooting skills. And actually, all of our ammo that we purchased last year, or almost all of it that we purchased last year for that purpose, was actually used in training new officers just to qualify.
Okay.
So I've been able to give out a little ammo to the officers to get out and shoot a little bit, but not as much as we would like to keep them proficient in their skills.
Because I think last year going into 23, that was one of the budget items that, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but we actually cut way back and went to this 3,456 was just enough to make sure guys could qualify and shoot around. So, cause I think when we first came here in 2023, we actually had it budgeted to give one box like every couple of months to keep them shooting, but we cut that one way back, so we kinda understood the assignment yet again this year. We are tight, so this is just what it went up to now this year. We've seen an increase in cost, so that's where, but we're still doing it too. It's not all the extra that we would like at this point, but it's what we need.
Yeah, well, that's fine, I just seen where,
Yep.
according to here, so we
Yeah.
didn't spend any, that's what I
Yeah.
wondered about.
Joe, your question about the breakdown of supplies, so when you add up all of the 2023 supply budget, it's 14,431. That's the total supplies budgeted for 2023. When you add up all the supplies for 2024, it's 18,232. As of June 30th, in all of their supplies, they've spent 7,455.17. Obviously, that's gonna go up quite a bit if they've spent that 3,500 in July as well, so. But the point system is something that was officially started in 2022, and it's thrown people off because not everyone actually uses it to
Yeah, I know
its full
that.
intention.
Yeah,
I believe that 2023 was the first year they budgeted under those lines. They didn't budget under them in 2022, but they were created so they could start tracking it, and they budgeted in 2023 for public safety. I believe Public Works started, they're a year behind Public Works is. They didn't necessarily budget underneath those lines. They, are now spending out of those lines, those point systems, so that they can budget for them for 2024. You spent 2,656 on ammo,
Okay,
How much?
2,656.
and I just got another shipment this week that was on back order, so they'll be sending that here soon. Maybe not, if we're lucky, they'll forget.
And obviously that $4,000 difference between 23 and next year, cause it's $4,000 higher in 24, but that's coming from the 4,000 in vests. Cause we didn't have to order those in 23.
Are utilities trending to be way higher?
Utilities, 2023 was kind of a crapshoot for utilities because propane kicked everybody's butt. If there's propane in the building, you will see that they are over budget. Airport, fire hall, I believe you guys pay a portion for that building down there as well. Propane with this winter was insane. So utilities are looking bad for all of those departments with propane.
So is that why it's higher than last year budgeted?
I would assume so. I didn't see that.
Also in there is, 2 cell phones as well, so that the officers can share 2 cell phones. So whoever the 2 are on duty, they will grab the cell phones through the FirstNet and do all of the work on city-issued cell phones. When they have to take pictures, get texts sent to them, for case-related stuff. There's also that in there, and that is under utilities as well. We've also got 2 quotes on managed IT. We're waiting on the 3rd, so that number can change as well. But until we get the 3rd quote, we just left all numbers as are.
just to verify, it's my understanding today that you guys just cut 2,800 from your budget, aside from personal services, is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
I've been asked to give a little bit more, rather than just sending out the budget sheets, they've asked that I start sending out a more detailed version of what's going on in these committees to council too. Because they don't necessarily understand all the changes, they just see a number at the bottom, not necessarily what's being cut.
Actually, 3102 was cut today.
I had 26 in computers and 200 in DARE.
We just take the, 26 was just a guesstimate. If you take the 5180 divided by 2, yeah, it's $2,590 was cut out of that one.
And then 300 out of, or 200 out there.
Yep, 200 out of DARE. So yeah, Chandra, you are completely correct. I added 300 instead of 200, so never mind, yes. Oh, but actually, then you can also, oh, we're good there. Yep,
Are you sure?
positive,
2790.
because looking at this number, yep, we're good.
2,800.
And also in that equipment line, 950 of that number is also for a replacement of a body cam. That's how much those body cams cost, and we have one that needs to be replaced. And then 2,500 for a copier printer. We fixed that big, massive one that's down there currently, but we'll see how long the fix lasts.
The biggest items, of course, in every budget is the top 5 lines, and there's not a whole lot we can do about those. Not a lot of cutting there. So we're locked in with those costs. So that's why we look scrutinized down below, scrutinize every dollar, because the top five's pretty much locked in.
Any other questions? Ron?
Good questions.
Austin? Nope. Okay. Well, then we will go ahead and move on to 911.
All right, 911. This'll be good.
Buckle up, gentlemen.
This will be.
I cut 4,000 out of it. Yeah.
So obviously, personal services, like we talked about, that's our biggest increase this year. From the last meeting, we learned that there were some things missing out of that budget that we had to add. So, yes, Shannon graciously cut $4,000 out of there, but not before she gave me $20,000 the week before. So, so yeah, that's up quite a bit. So I'll just go on down and just stop me if you want to, or whatever. insurance line, budgeted for $700 there. Out of that comes our notaries. So I budgeted to get 5 new notaries next year. I could probably take that down to 4, honestly. They're about $130 each, so I could probably take $130 off of that. And then our insurance, Shannon put that number in there. $50 for our insurance, I think it was. Legals and advertisements, I left $400 in there, I cut $200 from last year. We haven't used any of that up to this point, because we've been utilizing social media, and Indeed for the other departments has been free up to this point, so, but we would still like to put the $400 in there for that 7th state area.
Just in
And-
case.
Yeah, and it's $200 to run that for 2 weeks, so we thought if we could do that a couple times for next year.
Yeah, it sounds reasonable.
So we did take $200 out of there, but I'd like that 400. Repairs and maintenance, we left the same. The 4250 line, we left the same for this year. Just looking at my activity, the activity that's in there currently should have come out of a different line. Is why it looks like we spent more than we budgeted there. It was for a different line. I just coded it incorrectly at the beginning of the year. So the $200 on that 4250 line should be manageable there. Like PD mentioned, managed IT, we're still waiting on a final number there after we get that last quote. So that number will be more accurate. Let's see, 4250.2, the HR employment testing. I budgeted everything for 4 new hires for background checks, physicals, the pre-employment UAs, and then the random UAs. A little over $1,400 there. It was down a little bit from last year, but a lot. It was like $88 that I took off from last year. B&L, I think we talked about it last time. I did take $500 off of there, down to $1,500 from $2,000. We haven't spent any of that money up to this point, but we are scheduled this month for the radio tower upgrade that's happening across the state. And I have a feeling after that comes, we're probably going to need them to come see us. When their stuff breaks, it breaks expensive, so I'd like to be able to leave money in that if possible. 4254 is our hearing tests. Again, I budgeted for 4 new hires for next year. It was the same that we budgeted for 23. Golden Weston Cyber Tech, we're about halfway through the year budget-wise, and we've spent about half the budget there, so I think we had that number fairly dialed in. It could end up changing once we, because that direct tech would get added to that line too, is where we take that a lot of. So depending on managed IT and some of those expenses, maybe during budget season next year, we could take that number and change it a little bit. I just don't know what that's gonna look like, and I'd hate to take a bunch of money out of there and then end up needing it. Language line, I did increase, because as you can see, this winter caught us off guard. And we spent a lot of money in that line compared to what we budgeted for. So what I did was I did a 3-year average, what we spent this year and the last 3. I think $200 is a fairly safe bet. I'm hoping anyways. This year, I feel like we have used language line services more than we have in a lot of years. It seems like at least once a month or every other month, we're contacting them for interpreter services. So that was a definite increase for us from this year. In terms of our supplies, pretty much left that the same. Our uniforms did go up a little bit. Again, I budgeted for 4 new hires. We just purchased shirts at the end of last year.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Hold up. So I'm looking at the supplies. I think we just accidentally left a 0 because our supplies, you actually have budgeted at 1,000. This sheet says 100, so the number
Oh, I'm
is
sorry.
actually 1,000.
Yes. Yes, 1,000 in supplies. I apologize, I wasn't looking at that sheet.
That's the only one that's off. I
Okay.
did catch that.
Like I said, uniforms, we did go up a little bit, just, the cost of, as far as current employees, we paid for new uniform shirts at the end of last year, so those are still fairly new. We should be able to manage to get through with those and then look at replacing again the following budget season. Office supplies, again, the same. Like Justin said, we spend a lot of money on paper. And then just the other miscellaneous things, ink, toner. The printer fax machine that we use is not on like a service contract of any kind, so the ink and toner we pay for out of those. Let's see. And then, looking at the sheet here, like Chandra mentioned, so it's through June, I think we have spent some additional money on paper and ink and toner since this number, so we are at about half, maybe even a little bit more of that $1,500 that we budgeted for this year. So I think, we've got that number fairly dialed in there. And the fuel and gas, I budgeted the same trips as I did last year, just accounted for the lower fuel prices, and so that was down $75 from last year's budget. Our travel conference school line was able to come down quite a bit because we don't have as many employees that will require recertifications next year for our power loan. So, we took about $1,600 off of that line. Utilities, I budgeted for $6,000 for this year. It did come down from last year. I took what we're spending this year, halfway through. I think we're gonna be right, I think just shy of 6,000, so I think that should be an okay number. So that was one of the areas we were able to cut a little bit. Equipment, like we talked about before, is still down quite a bit. We don't have any computers that we're scheduling to replace for '24. What we are looking to do is add a couple additional power supplies. This year, I know we've talked about it in committees before. We replaced a few down in the tech room. They're just getting to end of life at this point. The 4, we got 1 for each workstation in dispatch that are new, but we don't have any backups. So in the event that we lose one, we're just out. So I would like to get 2, just in case we would need them. They're $725 a piece. And then we need to replace monitors. Going through each of the 4 workstations, there's like 7 of them that are getting image burned pretty badly, things like that. Those are 110. So what we found for a 19-inch monitor was about the average price there. So equipment line, we were down significantly because we don't need computers this year, but we're still a little over $2,200 there. So the miscellaneous computer software, at this point, because I don't have a solid number for managed IT yet, and no final decisions have been made there, I have not yet taken that off, but, based on what we're seeing so far, that number should go away, that $330, because that's what we would need to budget for antivirus and the anti-malware, and I think, that's included as part of the managed IT, what we've seen so far anyways. So that number should be gone there, that miscellaneous $330. Omnigo, I emailed that rep again the other day. She told me that they are very backed up at the moment, and so I'm still waiting on a quote. I just budgeted the 10% increase, which is what it was from 22 to 23. So I just did that math, and that's where that 5,900 came from, 5,987. And Omnigo is our CAD system. That's the one that we share with the PD and the jail management. Omnix is a set number. The Leah up at the state did get that to me. That cost is not increasing for 24, so that'll stay the same. Power phone, I know originally we come and asked for the annual training license, but we've taken that off there. So from last meeting, we cut $2,786 off of that budget line there, down to, it'll be a $450 need at this point. That is for the program for the EMD tablet.
So Andrea, we've got two different numbers on that one, so what will that number actually be? Cause on the sheet now it's 3236 and it's going down to 450.
Yeah, that's the 2786 is the difference. That was the
Okay.
increase. With the training license, the request was 3236, but now we'll just need $450 since we took the training portion of that off. We still have to pay for the program that we use, that gives us the instructions and things for that program. So that's a need, that's a requirement to stay certified with them. Central Square, that's our mapping software. That the quote that I received from them for 2024 expenses was $3,911, and that's our 911 mapping. So that stays the same. So not a lot of, we don't have wants in our budget aside from the training that I was hoping to get this year, but we'll see what next year looks like for that. Everything else, I think we've got pretty dialed in.
I have a total cut, and I did put in there the difference between the 100 and the 1,000. Total cut is $2,016, potentially $2,346 if that 330 goes away. But until we know that, the total cut today is $2,016.
So, is this projected revenue 899,712, and the 4154 in the red? Is that,
So the $899,712, that number does include what corrections would transfer in. So the $4,154, that is the difference that I changed this morning for the personal services. That was the difference between the 7.5 to 6.75. And then, so it'll be $4,154 plus the 2016. So ultimately, it's $6,170 less that corrections has to transfer in.
Austin, the sheet that I brought today shows our actual projected revenues. I set it up there, but I've got another one if you need.
Yep.
So $322,620 is our anticipated revenue for 2024.
Andrea, you said other project line was 7,500 for this year's budget. Was that computers you was talking?
Yeah, that
That
was
you didn't need?
computers. And then we didn't end up, we were gonna replace the CAD computers this year, and then we actually ended up needing, the more immediate need was our camera computers. So that we could, the computers that we had will not operate the new camera system that we just got down there. So, we needed those more urgently than we did the CAD ones, so
Okay.
that's why the line's different.
What's the, so in 2023, we didn't spend anything on managed IT?
No, we haven't had a managed IT contract signed yet. We've been upgrading tech at the law enforcement center before we got into a signed agreement.
Where does that cash go to?
Goes back into our cash,
So we transfer less?
if that is what you choose to do at the end of the year, correct?
So there's 27,150 on managed IT that doesn't look like it's gonna get spent, which it, technically, we just transfer less into, their bottom line is gonna look 27,000 better.
The hope is that once we've gathered all of the quotes for managed IT and made a decision in 2024, we'll prorate for the rest of 23, is my understanding.
Yes,
Is
if-
kind of the plan.
once-
So
So may
we'll spend a little bit, but.
Yeah, we might spend a little
it's
bit, but we're not
definitely
gonna spend
be
her all.
that 27. Yeah, we were just told to, that was the original quote that we kind of started with in 22, and we were told to just leave it so that if we did end up getting a contract signed, but we haven't up to this point yet.
The difference that we generate with 911 total revenue and the actual cost of providing the service, we fall short $500,000 roughly. Is that the way you look at it? Roughly $500,000 a year.
And the state knows that, so it's,
I
they're
know,
not, yeah.
I know, and there's things that I think they need to address from their end of it to make this a little more palatable, because it is quite a deal. I mean, that's a lot of money. So the 27,000 you're talking about would be off of that $500,000 transfer, and so, yeah, it sounds better, but in actuality, it's a drop in the bucket. It helps, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of like a drop in the bucket. But there's things that the state needs to do to, you know.
And I know the 911 coordinator, I've had conversations with her again as we, about every budget season. And she gets the same phone calls from the same PSAPs every year, and it's the same concerns. Unfortunately, I think she's leaving us at the end of this month. But, you know, they just had their meeting, and she brought up the concerns that we all have. Now, they're at a point where the larger PSAPs are starting to feel the impact. They're not necessarily
Good,
profitable
maybe
either
something will be
anymore.
done then.
Yeah, so now that the big ones who seem to have more of a voice are starting to feel the hurt a little bit too, maybe we're a little bit
Maybe
closer
somewhat, yeah.
to some sort of
Yep.
solution. That's the hope anyways. It's unfortunate that it had to come to that before they looked at the rest of us, but progress is progress, I guess.
Yep. Again, it looks pretty bare bones. I don't know.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. Darren, you're up.
Looking a lot smaller numbers than those guys.
That's right.
Couple places we could lose a little. I travel and conference, we've got an average of 10 or 11 guys going. We went from 4, we could probably drop that down to 3, and still stay ahead of the motel and the gas prices, I guess. Cones and traffic control, we got a bunch of stuff coming this year, we could probably take 1,000 off of that and go to 2,000 for next year. Same way on hose, we've got stuff coming this year, depending on how this, what happens over the winter and stuff, we could probably take 2 out of there and go to 4. So that'd be 1, 2, 4,000, right off the bat there. But the rest, like the equipment, that stuff's coming, we've got, there's AEDs that need replaced that we carry on the truck, we've got cameras, the infrared cameras getting old, and they get to the point where they don't support it or don't make batteries for it. We've got fans on the trucks, the structure fans they're getting old and dated, trying to keep them running, and the list goes on as far as the equipment goes that we need, so, I don't know what we can lose out of there, because things just keep,
And I think what we'll have to do, Darren, is make an actual list and get prices on there and try to come back with a hardened in, dialed in number for what that's gonna cost. So, cause I know we have one more committee meeting before the retreat. So I think that's probably where we'll start working on that and really dial that number in. The only other one that we can really take a look at, depending on what you guys are feeling, is the 50,000 for the outlay. That's kinda what happened last year too.
our annual memberships went up from $750 to $1950. That's our service contract that we're gonna do for the sirens and service contract for that $30,000 air compressor that we use for our breathing air.
So that's something that Jody and I discussed after the last meeting. So your annual memberships, those are just memberships that you pay to be a member of something. Your service contracts are actually a third party coming in, so that actually goes under repairs and maintenance.
We need to.
Yep.
We'll just switch that around then, yeah.
Switch it right, yeah.
So the service contracts go under repairs and maintenance.
Same as like, pretty similar to like MIT. That's a third party coming in and doing services for you underneath the contract.
And under the consultants, it shows that we have used 0 out of that, but last committee, we did call Holly and visit with her, and she is going to move some of that around, because that was coming out of the wrong one as well, so there has actually been money coming out of that one. That's just gonna get adjusted, so when July closes out, we'll see that one.
Yep, so you'll actually see 36, or not 36, whatever half of the year is, what do we pay you? 300 a month? So 3 times 6, 1,800.
1,800.
You would see under the consultant and 1,800 less under repairs and maintenance. And that has been corrected.
What's coming out of repairs and maintenance?
Yep. Yep. So technically through June, what you spent in repairs and maintenance is $2,974.74.
So that number won't change. It'll lose 1,800 and gain 1,800, so, yeah, it'll be pretty much right where it's at.
If you choose to stay with the outlay for the ladder truck, it will come out of this budget altogether. It'll show as an expense under the fire department. And then we have, state law allows us to create outlay funds. That's a 500 fund that we can create. And then it will show as a revenue from the general into that for that outlay. That way it's not constantly just staying in there, and then once we're ready to spend it, either as a down payment or whatever, then it'll come out of that specialty fund, so.
As long as they can, that fund, I mean, once we start putting that money in there,
Yep, so by
Is it-
resolution, you can set an outlay fund for 5 years.
That's what I was
60
thinking.
months. If you don't spend it within that time, you have to have good reason that you haven't spent it during that time, and then would have to pass another resolution stating that you're going to extend it for whatever period of time that you're going to extend it.
okay.
What would you guess a new truck?
That was last month when I talked to him. The new, like the one we've got is a 75-foot straight stick, they call it. The new stock build per se, you know, is a truck like that, no frills, no nothing, it's a 78-foot. And right now, it's 1.1. It's 2 years out for delivery, and then he said he thought it was in 26. All the emission standards that are hitting everybody else with the DEF and all that garbage are coming. He said that's gonna hit our fire service. He said that'll add 50 to 80,000 per vehicle. So I guess in my opinion, with the issues we've had, I mean, I don't know if you guys have had any DEF issues on tractors and trucks and stuff, but, you know, I mean, I know it's a lot of money, but if you're thinking about doing it, I'd do it before that garbage hits the system. I mean, I don't know why they're even doing that to the emergency services. I mean, with all the issues they've had, who wants to, you know, so you got the truck set up, you're fighting, whether it's us fighting Main Street fire or a big city fighting a apartment building fire, you know, you're halfway through and all of a sudden the DEF system shuts down. And now you got a ladder. That's all you have. I mean, if you can get it back down. I mean, that pushing that on the emergency services is just ridiculous. I mean, look at what we do. And when you need to start something, it needs to go. And I know there's a lot of emergency vehicles around the country, but that's a drop in the bucket to the daily drivers and all that stuff. I mean, yeah, that shouldn't even be a question. But that was the numbers he threw out to me last month when I talked to him. He thought that was coming in 26 when they're gonna start. He said, basically, that's what that is. He said, it's the emissions regulations that they've been pushing on everybody else. They're gonna push them on the emergency services.
So if that's something you need to take into consideration as council, if you want to purchase it before the death, which is 2 years.
I'm just saying, that's just.
If you're only
me
doing
talking.
50,000 a year, that's 100,000, 24, 25, and then purchase in 26, maybe 150 if you choose to do it that way. Is it worth creating the outlay, or is it something that if we have the cash at that time, we take it from cash, we get a loan, we have at the end of this year, we have $1 million borrowing power. I know the goal is to have a lot more than that in 25, 26, but until we see that, I'm not gonna count on that. So is it something we'd rather use cash to put half down at that time, rather than messing with an outlay? Because you do have cash. And I know I usually say don't spend cash, but this is kind of what the purpose of cash is for when something like this comes up. So Doubling, or if you want to continue for 5 years, knowing that you'll have 5 times 50 and you're gonna have a deaf on there for sure.
Yeah, that, all I'm saying is like our fuel trucks and stuff, I mean, you're out going down the road and there might be a, might be a depth sensor that goes bad, now all of a sudden, for going 70 miles an hour down the road, you can get 15 miles an hour out of it. To me, that's a safety issue, because now you're hindering traffic and you're causing problems out there, but no, they say that's better for everything, so. They're just pushing that on the, tractors the same way, I mean, they've got it in to do stuff, and it's just not an answer, but that's just my opinion.
What would you anticipate the current truck being a trade-in value?
That, he didn't know, he'd have to.
They would take it though? They would find a home for it?
They can
or-
find resale stuff.
Okay.
Is the way he talked to me, they got resale stuff, or they'll find somebody that and again, what it's worth.
That truck's 21 years old, something?
It's, 98.
98.
I believe.
98, 20, yeah, 25 years.
It showed up right after the school burned up, so.
Okay.
And that was, what, 375?
Yep.
Bought it, something like that.
Pretty close to that.
So, as far as, what it's worth, if it's worth that, it might be, I have no idea.
I'd still get half of what they gave for it 25 years.
That's what I mean,
Not
I
bad.
don't know what,
Not a bad investment, really.
but what something like that's worth, I guess, he wouldn't throw a number out, he said, depending on when and what you do, and
We're getting a lot of that with our leases. So a lot of the leases we've signed recently, they won't give you a price what buyout is. They say it's fair market value. At that time, when it's time to buy out, they will not give you a price.
they're just, I'm sure they're trying to cover their butt too.
Yep. Which makes budgeting hard,
So,
but
yeah, he throws a number out there, then all of a sudden, you can't get even close to it, then you were counting on this. So, yeah, he wouldn't say much, but he said that's gonna add an average of 50 to 80,000. They put that stuff. Which in 25 years, look at the price difference, that's ridiculous. But in the same week, watching a commercial last night, advertising a new Denali Suburban for $109,000. It's a vehicle. Can't see.
The sad part is you need that much to go to the grocery store anymore.
Yeah. You guys with your budget, you get your hands full.
I would personally really like to get the outlay started. I think it's gonna be a full council. I mean, $1.2 million, I mean, 50,000, such a drop in the bucket. We're not really even gaining ground. If we did that every year, it'd take another 20 years, then the trucks would be $2 billion. I don't know, I guess until we get closer to the end of this budget, and I really think it's more of a 150 to 250,000 a year outlay to make it worth doing. That's like putting $5 away a month for a new pickup.
So, putting it down, yeah.
But we do have to start somewhere. It needs to be done. I mean, I know we've talked in fire meetings, they're flat out telling us it's getting tougher and tougher to find parts. That nozzle, I think, wasn't it last year, they had
Yeah.
lucked out and they got one, but.
Yes, I mean, it's like anything, I mean, fire service, we're not immune, I mean, age, they stop support, they start, they change designs on this and that, and they just don't make repairs for stuff anymore.
So I think that, I mean, I don't know, I guess that's up to committee, but I think we're gonna have to talk more at.
It's gotta be
towards the- Towards the end of the budget, but I would like to see something get started.
And we can leave it in there, and if you guys decide that, you know, as we get to budget retreat, that that's not gonna work, then we cut it then. But we'll kinda work on the next 2 weeks and dial in that 31,000 and,
Get some little closer numbers and
yep. See what we can do there.
Still cut 4,000 today.
yeah. That's like 20,000 over there.
That's right. You feel the pinch more.
It's a
Your
start.
little- your little department?
We're trying, I don't know what, there's some stuff we just, it's tough to, like I said, you gotta have some things.
Well, we all kinda came in pretty tight, cause we've been told it needs to be not wants and pick your needs. All right, any other questions? Okay, well, thank you.